Hey guys, most of you know me, but I'm Miss Ziegler, and I just want to welcome you to the first grade Google Classroom. All of your teachers are working very hard to get their lessons and activities for you to enjoy, to keep our learning going while we're out of school. So if you have any questions or anything, please be sure to message your teacher and they can help you. So each day you're going to have a reading lesson and a math lesson with activities for you to do. So I hope you enjoy all of it. So I'm going to start with today's reading lesson. And today I chose the book Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming. And I chose this book because we had just finished spring break and you might have noticed a lot of things blooming outside. You might have seen some flowers. On this book, there's a farmer and a vegetable garden. And so a lot of people have vegetable gardens. You might have even helped someone plant a vegetable garden. So first I want us to brainstorm, what kinds of vegetables can you grow in a vegetable garden? That's right. You might have said carrots, lettuce, squash, cucumbers, tomatoes. All of those things we can grow in a vegetable garden. So we're going to look at the cover and make some predictions on what we think this book is going to be about. And then at the end of the story, we're going to go back and review all of our story elements, the characters, the setting, the problem, and the solution. So let's look at the cover and think about the title, Muncha, Muncha, Muncha. I see a farmer and a vegetable garden. And I see 3 bunnies up here, and they look like they are eating some of the vegetables. So if you want to, you can pause the video, and I want you to think about what you think might happen in this story. I want you to use your background knowledge on what you know about bunnies and vegetable gardens. Think about if you've heard other stories that are similar to this, and think about what might happen in this story. I bet you're right. I bet you know that the bunnies are probably going to get in this vegetable garden and eat the vegetables. Well, this farmer is Mr. McGrilly, and he wants to plant a vegetable garden. And so we're going to read the story to find out what challenges the bunnies give him when he's planting his vegetable garden, and what he does to try to keep them from eating all of his vegetables. All right, Muncha, Muncha, Muncha by Candace Fleming. For years, Mr. McGrilly dreamed of planting a garden. He dreamed of getting his hands dirty, of growing yummy vegetables, and of gobbling them all up. But he never once tried it until this spring, said Mr. McGrilly. This spring, by golly, I'm going to plant a garden. Look at him looking in the window, thinking about what he wants to plant in his vegetable garden. So he hoed and he sowed and he watched his garden grow. The story says he sowed. In this book, that means that he planted the seeds. To sow the seeds is to put them under the dirt and to plant them. Lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes. Yum, yum, yummy, said Mr. McGrilly. I'll soon fill my tummy with crisp, fresh veggies. I bet you were right. All of those things he's going to plant in his vegetable garden. But one night, when the sun went down and the moon came up, 3 hungry bunnies appeared. Tip, tip, tippy, pat, muncha, muncha, muncha. Just like the title. Muncha means to munch. They were eating the vegetables. The next morning when Mr. McGrilly saw his gnawed sprouts, he was angry. Gnawed means they chewed, to chew on his sprouts or his plants. Soon he built a small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. "There," he declared, "no bunny can get into my garden now." He came up with a plan to build a fence around his vegetable garden. Wonder if that's going to keep those bunnies out. And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat, spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. Oh, look what happened. The bunnies hurdled over the fence. To hurdle means to jump over something while you're running. The bunnies hurdled over the fence. The next morning, when Mr. McGrilly saw his nibbled leaves and gnawed sprouts, he was really angry. Soon, he built a tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. He huffed. "Those flop ears will never get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now." Did you notice how the author used the words flop ears? Those flop ears will never get over it. Who are they talking about? That's right. He's talking about the bunnies. And the sun went down and the moon came up, and tippy, 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 pat, dig, scrabble, scritch, scratch, scratch, spring hurdle, dash, 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 muncha, muncha, muncha. How did those bunnies get in this time? Look, they went under it. They burrowed under the ground. The next morning, when Mr. McGrilly saw his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was really, really angry. So he made a deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence all around his vegetable garden. Trench means to dig a long, thin ditch. He made a deep, wet trench around his vegetable garden. "Ha!" he snorted. "Those pufftails can't get under it. They can't get over it. No bunny can get into my garden now." Now the author's using the words pufftails, flop ears and pufftails. They're talking about the bunnies. Look at Mr. McGrilly. He is angry. See his trench? Do you think those bunnies can get through that now? And the sun went down and the moon came up. And tippy, 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 pat, dive, paddle, splash, splash. Wonder what they're in. Dig, scrabble, scratch, scratch, spring, hurdle, dash, dash, muncha, muncha, muncha. They got right through that trench. Oh no, I bet Mr. McGrilly is going to be really mad that they got through the trench. The next morning, when Mr. McGrilly saw his chomped blossoms, his chewed stems, his nibbled leaves, and his gnawed sprouts, he was furious. So the author chose the word furious to mean that Mr. McGrilly is really, really, really mad. So he hammered and blocked, sawed and stopped, drilled and filled and trapped and locked. And he built a huge, enormous thing before the deep, wet trench outside the tall wooden wall behind the small wire fence and all around his vegetable garden. I've outsmarted those twitch whiskers for sure. Flop ears, puff tails, twitch whiskers. Who's he talking about? That's right, those bunnies. They can't get through it. They can't get under it and they can't get over it. No bunny, no way, no how can get into my vegetable garden now. Look at that enormous thing he has built. It's taller than his house. He is determined to keep those bunnies from getting into his vegetable garden. And the sun went down and the moon came up and tippy, 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 stop. The 3 hungry bunnies looked and smelled and touched the huge, enormous thing before them. And tippy, 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 pat. Look at the bunnies. He's tapping his head. He's looking at the log. The bunnies hopped away. I want you to stop for a minute and I want you to predict what you think will happen next. The bunnies are trying to come up with a plan. Wonder if they're going to get through that. The next morning, when Mr. McGreely saw his untouched vegetables, he was happy. If they were untouched, that means the bunnies didn't touch them. They didn't get them this time. I beat the bunnies, he whooped and did a jiggly wiggly victory dance. Then he climbed over, jumped across, squeezed between, and crawled under until he reached his vegetable garden. Aha, sighed Mr. McGreely, at last, smacking his lips. He picked and pulled up lettuce, carrots, peas, tomatoes, and with his basket overflowing, he reached inside for something yummy. I want you to look closely at the picture. Do you see any bunnies? Here he is getting his vegetables. Muncha, muncha, muncha. Where are the bunnies? They're in his basket. Those sneaky bunnies snuck in his basket and he didn't even know it. So look, the end of the story. He's eating with the rabbits. So, did Mr. McGreely outsmart the bunnies? Or did the bunnies outsmart Mr. McGreely? You're right. The bunnies outsmarted him. And he chose just to eat the vegetables with them. Okay, so let's talk about the story elements. Let's talk about the character. The character is a person or an animal in the story. So who are the characters in our story? Mr. McGreely and the 3 bunnies. The setting. The setting is the time and the place of the story. The story takes place in the springtime in Mr. McGreely's garden. Oh, you know the problem. Some type of trouble that the character gets into. The bunnies keep sneaking into the garden to eat the vegetables. So what is the solution? Is how the character solved or fixed the problem. He tries to build a fence, a wall, a trench, and a building around his garden, but the bunnies keep getting in his garden to eat his vegetables. Okay, so let me remind you of our vocabulary words. We talked about trench is a deep ditch, and hurdle to jump over something while you're running. Okay. So I have an assignment for you. I want you to write what you would do to keep the bunnies out of the garden. So I've attached this page for you. Your parents can print this off, or you can write on a separate sheet of paper. I want you to write 3 to 5 sentences on what you would do to keep the bunnies from getting into your vegetable garden. You can also build it with Play-Doh or blocks, and you can have your parents send a picture to your teacher. So I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson, If you have any questions or need any help, just be sure and message your teacher. Thank you guys.